1, 2, 3, 2, 2, 3, and there we go. Alright. Good morning, good evening, and good afternoon, whichever it is. My name is Quill, and welcome to Critical Lockdown, the series that I've invented to keep me sane while the world ends. Anyway, today I'd like to start off with what many consider to be a classic film from the 1990s. No, not that one. No, I was thinking something a little more comedic. No, instead what I mean is, well, f*** it, you've seen the title, it's The Mask. Released in the good old summer of 1994, this was one of 3 films that year that catapulted Jim Carrey's career, the others being Ace Ventura: Pet Detective and Dumb and Dumber. It was a box office hit, grossing $351 million against a $23 million budget, making this at the time the most profitable comic book film behind Christopher Reeve's Superman.
That's outrageous.
The film was so successful that an animated series was made just 1 year later to capitalize on it. And, it was fun, it was entertaining for what it was, it wasn't half bad. But then we also got... oh, God forgive me. But in the end, the real question is, does the film still hold up 26 years after its original release? Well, that's what we're gonna find out today. So, as my good friend Foster would say, sit back, relax, and this is The Mask. Believe it or not, the strongest aspect of this movie for me isn't the effects or the humor, but rather the characters. Each of them are given such unique and distinct personalities that make them likable and fun to watch. And I'm just gonna say it right here, this movie has to have the best performance of Jim Carrey I have ever seen. He's so good in this movie at how he portrays the shy, timid, and awkward Stanley Ipkiss, so that when he does put on the mask, he becomes a living, breathing cartoon character. He's so expressive in the way he moves and the way he acts, he's just so incredibly entertaining to watch.
That's gotta hurt.
The comedic timing, the visual gags, the over-the-top cartoonish nature is not just there as the main selling point of the film, but to serve as part of Stanley's character, since we do see him watching cartoons with his dog Milo. I love this. It isn't just there to appeal to kids, but it gives more depth to Stanley and adds to his likable nature. Also, his relationship with Milo is just so cute and fun to watch. Look at him, he's so adorable, you just want to nibble him. Adorable. The supporting cast are all great and are given time to shine. Charlie, Stanley's best friend, is legitimately kind towards him, always trying to cheer him up, and is really funny in his own right. I especially love the running gag where he tries to get with a woman, yet they always go to Stanley instead. The faces he makes are just priceless. Speaking of woman, Cameron Diaz plays Tina Carlisle, making her first feature film debut with this movie, and I think she does a wonderful job in the role. At first glance, you think she's this wild card, this enchanting but deadly seductress who's only there to manipulate Stanley and get the money needed for her boyfriend Dorian, whom I'll get to later in a bit. But as the film goes on, we come to see that she's grown a soft spot for Stanley and realizes this once she's found out that he's the Mask. They do subvert expectations in making us believe that he has no chance with her, but ultimately, through their connection and their genuine affection for one another, they do get together, and it feels very satisfying. There's also Lieutenant Kellaway and Doyle, the 2 detectives who are looking for the Mask. They're really good comedic foils for Stanley and are well acted. They have a really good dynamic with one another, and it would have been nice to see a spin-off where they are the main characters. Some of the minor characters are quite memorable in their own right, like the 2 garage guys that gave Stanley that terrible car. Seriously, the real jerks for giving him a car like that. And even the landlady neighbor was quite funny. Overall, I think the characters serve the story quite well, and they are what make this film charming to watch. They're well acted, well written, and well directed. The effects are something I have to commend. They're appropriately cartoony and Looney Tunes-like. Some would argue they look dated and out of place in the film, but this is actually something I also have to praise about it. The Mask's abilities do feel out of place in this world, and why they stick out more is something very strange and unusual. I don't know why the people in this film aren't more concerning that there's literally an actual cartoon character doing all sorts of crazy shit in the city, but I digress. The cinematography works at its best in the nighttime scenes. The colors, the flashy wardrobe all stick out more and makes for a visually pleasing experience. It has that timeless feel to it like Tim Burton's Batman. Real eye-catcher. Perhaps my second favorite part of this film has to be the soundtrack. It's the epitome of the 90s, very jazz-oriented with hip-hop and swing thrown into the mix. Some of my favorites are Hey Pachuco, Bounce Around, which plays during the closing credits, and of course Cuban Pete. I sadly can't play them due to something called copyright laws, and no, I'm not going to sing crappy renditions of them. I don't exactly have the voice of a soprano. Anyway, there's also Randy Edelman's musical score, which is quite underrated, and I'm surprised it isn't talked about more in most reviews that I've seen of this film. The main theme is grand and majestic with a hint of a dark, twisted, and mischievous nature to it that perfectly fits the title character. It's no Danny Elfman's Batman, but I think it's really good in its own right. For as much praise I give this film, you must be thinking, come on, there are at least some problems you have with it, right? I mean, you are correct to assume that. I mean, there are only a few that I have, but I'm gonna just list them anyway. For example, why doesn't the people in Edge City not scream in terror that there's a green man doing all sorts of crazy shenanigans with logic-defying powers? Have they experienced something like this before? I don't know, they never explain. And while the cinematography is great during the nighttime scenes, it really doesn't stick out that much during the daytime scenes. They're plain, and while they're not ugly per se, it's just not as appealing to look at as during the night parts. The Peggy Brand character they introduce is never brought up again after it's revealed that she made a deal with the mob to turn Stanley over. I know there's a deleted scene that explains why she's left out after this part, but since they cut it out of the film, we're left with no other explanation, and that did bug me after watching the film. Finally, we get to a character that I have mixed feelings on, and that's the main villain, Dorian, a gangster working for crime boss Nico and plans to overthrow him by killing him and taking over his criminal organization. Firstly, I like that he's meant to be sort of an anti-version of Stanley. Both men are treated poorly by their superiors and they aspire to do something greater in life. While Stanley unleashes his more mischievous nature and rarely ever putting people in true harm's way, Dorian becomes a flat-out monster when he puts it on. And this is the part where his character nearly falls flat a little. I get that they say in the film that the mask is supposed to bring your innermost desires to life, but really? All Dorian wants is to hurt people. That's not interesting. His supposed romance with Tina is very one-sided and they don't have much chemistry, but I think that is the film's intention with those two. Overall, he's a great character concept-wise, but very iffy on execution. Peter Greene does do a great job, however, and he really sells the typical douchebag gangster type. Despite some issues, I think The Mask holds up pretty well, as both a comedy and a superhero comic book film. It takes its creative liberties with the source material and makes a whole new entity with it. The cast look like they had a blast filming, the effects and gags are almost certain to get at least chuckles out of people, and has some absolutely iconic and quotable lines.
Who can?
Look, Ma! I'm roadkill! Ha ha ha!
Somebody stop me! Let's rock this joint!
Like Napoleon, I will divide and conquer.
Overall, I do think this film is charming, entertaining, and one of Carrey's finest roles to date. I wouldn't mind giving it a rewatch. I'm gonna give The Mask an A-. Thank you guys so much for watching, hope you enjoyed this review. If you did, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And if you want, you can follow my Instagram at Critical Lockdown, the link will be in the description. Once again, thanks so much for watching, and join me next time as I take a look at another 90s film, this time a remake of a beloved Universal classic. Stay tuned, my name is Quill, and this has been Critical Lockdown.